a year or something. But I've been very happy with them. I found them to be dependable. I've used Bluehost with some clients when I want a static IP address. That's handy. I have too many clients who use GoDaddy, which just makes me want to pull my hair out.
I'm using GoDaddy. Why? I'm going to report in a few months.
Most.
Right. You switch your Dreamhost, I can set up and I can say use it as FTP access, or shell access, or secure FTP access. On Dreamhost, on GoDaddy, if I switch them, if I say, all right, I don't want this username or just the FTP, I want them to have SSH, they move you to a whole other server. And we did that for a client. They don't tell you they're going to do this, they just do it. And when you move, automatically, you always run the risk of losing this. Not swear, but anyway. And we did. We lost stuff. So, I immediately moved that client to Dreamhost, and that was it. When people ask me, I always have people trying to say, let's go on Dreamhost, or, even the other ones that they recommend there, but I have to go to the other ones.
So once you pick your hosting provider, installing WordPress is fairly easy. They've got instructions for doing it manually, but with most of these hosts, there's no real reason to. Use the easy install, and basically you push a few buttons and you're up and running in about 10 minutes. On this page, I do have a video that walks you through the process for doing it on Dreamhost that someone put together, but the process is pretty similar on most of these providers. They walk you directly through it and setting up your username and everything and creating the database for you, so it's a pretty easy way to get started. Now, once you get installed, though, something to start with right away is thinking about security. WordPress, like anything else, it's fairly secure, but it gets hacked and people have problems, and you hear about people's databases being compromised. So I have a few links here with tips on that. One of the biggest things is to just remember to back up your database regularly. And I think everybody knows they should do that in general, but that's a big thing. And there are a few different tips, like there's your wp config.php file actually includes your password and your database name. If you go to wordpress.com, you can get some keys to encrypt it with wordpress.com account. But another trick is to just move that file up a level, makes it harder for people to find it, and make sure that it's read-only by you and your server, that other people can't read that file, because that's kind of the easiest way in. If they know how the paths work in WordPress, they know what the file is called, they know what's in it. So if it's readable, you're SOL.
Can you make that full screen if you're only using one panel?
What do you mean?
Is everyone seeing it okay?
It's just the girl who forgot her glasses.
Oh.
I have reading glasses. I don't know if they'll help. No, they won't.
Yeah, I've got it as big as it seems to work with the projector here.
F11 works with Internet Explorer. I don't know.
Whoa!
Is that better?
Try it one more time. Yeah! You rock!
See, this is the nice thing about HTML these days, is you can zoom in like this and it doesn't scramble everything. Remember when you used to have to just upgrade the type size and everything looked wonky? So, so security, something to be concerned about, but nothing too complicated. Okay. Oops. Another thing with clients is sometimes they, if they still aren't convinced, I try and show them important people that are using WordPress. So, you can have academic sites like the Harvard Gazette, the New York Times uses it for blogging, I think the Wall Street Journal does, a number of sites that are out there. So I also have a link here to the Wordpress Showcase where you can see more of those. And it was just announced this week that WordPress won the Hall of Fame CMS at the Open Source Awards. And they won that because they'd won the best CMS in the past. So, yeah.
You shift the Windows key F. I knew how to do it in Internet Explorer, but I didn't know how to do it in Firefox. Shift the Windows symbol, I don't know what to call it, F. Windows Command F.
What does that do?
Just do it. Shift Windows key F will be full screen.
Does it have the Windows key on your Apple?
Yeah, what is the Windows key? What?
I'm sorry, Command, Shift Command F. There we go. Now it's full screen, but you can get down.
Except now I can't go to my tabs.
Because she doesn't have tabs.
Control page up, page down.
When you move your mouse to the top, your tabs will appear. Your tabs are right there, just need to move your mouse to the top.
Okay. Let's oops. Hold on.
Are these bird pictures you took in the Galapagos?
Oh, yeah, I should probably explain that. I have a page on here that talks about it. When I was doing the site, I was going to make it very generic and general. I thought I'd just have a black box on the top, no pictures or anything, except there's a lot of text in here. I thought that was sort of boring, but there's also a little snippet of code that is useful for changing recurring elements on different pages, like conditional statements, so that if I'm on page X, you'll get the picture of the albatross. If you're on page Y, you'll get a picture of a blue-footed booby or something. So I wanted to be able to have an example for that. So that's why we have different pictures. So if this were a client site, I would try and make the pictures have something to do with the content. Obviously, I don't recommend having random bird pictures, but I had lots of them. So now, Stuart, how do I get out of this again?
Or your tabs are at the top. Move your mouse to the top.
I know, but I find it annoying.
Okay, so again, Shift Command F.
There, that's better.
There's a seat over here too. You want to be closer.
Okay.
I am going to watch you teach this class until one day something will penetrate.
Okay. Well, and Susie, this is probably a little bit.
That's okay.
Right.
One day something will unlock a key in my brain and it will all make sense.
Okay. Very good.
Sometimes I learn backwards.
So advanced calculus and then geometry?
Yeah.
Okay. Not that this is advanced calculus. This is more algebra 2. Okay, so the key thing about WordPress is the Wordpress Loop, which is, a chunk of code or various combinations of chunks of code that really kind of make everything happen. So the loop is where it grabs the information from your pages. It says, I want the title, I want an excerpt, or I want the title, and I want the full content. Basically, what bits you want to include on a page or a post. Lots of different variations on it. In this case, we're looking at the code for this particular page. This is loop count. It's pretty simple. You're saying, if there are posts, we look for the entry for it. It gives us the permanent link, various information about that. Then it pulls in the full content. So it's a very simple loop. There are other loops that are far more complicated, but the one thing about the loop that kind of perplexed me when I started using it was that I came from movable type, where we had a different coding scenario, and we could just sort of like piece lots of different things together to do what we wanted to. In WordPress, you have this chunk, and you cannot put things in the middle of it. That probably doesn't make any sense at all, but basically, if you have to keep the loop intact, you can't add things to it, but you can have multiple loops on a page. I have some links here to more information about the loop, but basically, this is what brings everything in to make things work, and there's some variations of it. On WordPress, you basically have pages and posts are your two primary types of content. We're looking at a page right now. So pages are for your standard website pages that you do for any business, and then posts are really for your blog, but you could be for news items too, and they have a little bit of different information in them. I said this particular loop is fairly straightforward, but let me show you a few different ones. And I'm not going to explain what all the PHP is behind what does everything because we only have an hour and a half. But just give you a few examples of some of the different things that it can do. Now, in archives and categories pages, archives and categories are used in your blog for, let's say, you blog about 3 topics: potatoes, cheese, and wildebeests. And so those would be your categories. And if you wanted to pull in a list of all the blog posts about wildebeests, this would be one of the pages that you would use to do that. Would be an archives category page. So here, this one is much longer than the other one, but you'll see that there's examples for different types of archives that it can be bringing in, and it determines that based on what type of file it is. And we watch the little color spinny thing. But basically, WordPress goes out and tries to figure out, okay, is this a date archive? Is it a category archive? Is it a tag? Is it what? And then it determines what to put in there. And I'm going to go through template examples a little bit more that will make more sense of this. But basically, it's just showing that an archive loop is somewhat different than a page loop, as is a blog post loop. So blog posts are rather like pages, except I think we like to take advantage of more features like putting a date on the post for archival information. You might want to put the author name on there. There might be times when you want to include multiple bits of content. Here's an example on posts. Sometimes you can have, like, maybe do an excerpt to read more and then click through to another page. You also have a link to track back if somebody else makes a comment or references your page on their blog. They can use that link. Yep.
I'm dealing with the same thing in Drupal.
Mm-hmm.
Are these like standard? In other words, if you go to WordPress.com, is there a list of standard things so that you have like a dictionary to look up and say track back means this, or is it pretty semantic where you're just figuring out by looking at it?
A little bit of both. They do have some pages that list functions, and they have some pages that list certain tags. Sometimes you have to poke around. When you install WordPress and you come with what comes with whatever theme it comes from, you can usually sort of poke through that and kind of get a sense of what does what. But themes come in many different flavors too. So this is from one of my themes. It's sort of a more generic theme. 2010 that came out this summer in WordPress 3.0. Also uses a lot of functions to pull things in, so those theme files might not have as much in them. And I didn't want to get into that because talking about functions.php in depth is, well, that's a whole nother several hours of stuff. But generally, there are sort of snippets you can look at, and I find that if I'm not quite sure what something does, if I just, highlight that little code and I Google it, I can usually come up with a definition either on the WordPress Codex or someone else has explained it better.
I was going to say, I always Google WordPress Codex, what I'm looking for.
Right.
It takes me right to the codex. Their explanations are pretty good, but a lot of times you have to go for 5 pages to,
right.
Because they, this and that. But
Yeah.
anyway, they are good.
Yeah. And sometimes you find the answer in their discussion forums where someone's asked a question about something. And I've also found that if the WordPress explanation doesn't make sense,